So as part of my work with CERP, or the Comprehensive Everglades Restoration Project, I created this map. This map helps to demonstrate where water should be flowing through the Everglades, originating from Lake Okeechobee and out to the Gulf. This map also demonstrates how highways tend to cut through the Everglades and interrupt that flow. As an educational resource, I am detailing every single step of the process to make this map. So if others would like to get into remote sensing, GIS, and help to demonstrate their own visualizations and projects, they can follow along with this guide. For the study, you will need an area of focus, visualization parameters, and a map to describe what it is you are studying. To do this, we will be using Google Earth Engine, a remote sensing tool, ArcGIS Pro, a GIS tool, and Photoshop as an image editing tool. For my project, I created what's called a digital elevation model, or a DEM. Your project may differ. You may be visualizing vegetation or sea surface temperature. So when starting your remote sensing with Google Earth Engine, you will need to decide on a dataset to use. This can be found in the Earth Engine catalog. There are tons and tons of different datasets to use for different areas, different applications. But as I said, I'm only interested in using a digital elevation model. So to search for that, I'll just type in DEM. We get a few different options. Now, I've already gone through the work of searching through which one is best for my purposes, but you will have to do a little research on your own. For my project, the Copernicus GLOW 30 mission is best for mine because it has a 30-meter resolution and has global coverage. Now getting to actually inputting this data set, we're going to open up a Earth Engine project. I'm skipping over signing up for an account right now, but you can do that completely for free. Now, I already have all of my code collected and ready to run, but I'll walk through the steps line by line so that you can follow along at home. So the first step is going to be to outline our area of study. Like I've said, I'm studying South Florida and the Everglades, so we're just going to create a geometry focused in on that area. This will be our region of interest. And you can see that's already shown up as a variable imported. And now we're going to import the the database. Okay. And now, line by line here, we're going to rewrite the code. So this line just centers the map on your area of focus, so you won't get lost too easy. This line loads in the dataset as a variable for you to call upon later in your code. This selects the specific digital elevation model within the dataset. Datasets are made up of multiple different layers or bands for different purposes. We're only worried about the digital elevation or digital surface model, so we're only going to use that one. Now we have to reduce the image collection as the Copernicus mission is over a large set of time. Because of this, we can't visualize all of that at one instant. With a digital elevation model, it's okay to use the mean as the elevation doesn't change all that much over time. So we're just reducing that down to the mean. We also have to reduce not only the temporal aspect of the data set, but the spatial aspect. We do this by reducing it to only our region of interest, the geometry. Next, we have to establish how we want to view our image. We do this through the elevation visualization, our minimum elevation, and our maximum elevation. South Florida is very flat, so these are in units of meters, and we're only looking up to 9 meters. This is a very important step in the process of making your map. You'll have to decide what colors you want to use to visualize your image. There's an incredible tool called Color Brewer 2, which will help you decide how you want your map to look. It has multiple different color schemes for you to choose from, as well as a very simple way to copy and paste it into your code. Let's go with this color scheme. And because we have 0 meters to 9 meters, 0 meters being sea level, we're going to pick 8 different classes. Start off with 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0 as black. And then everything from there will be our low to high. And just clean up that text a little bit. Perfect. Finally, to actually apply all this to our map below, we use the map add layer command. Click run, and there we go. Now, left and right here, it's displaying the exact same data, just different colors, different ways of looking at it. Finally, we have the image, but we don't have a very high resolution aspect of it. We can't just download this as an image file. To do that, we have to export it to our Google Drive, and we use this command to do that. So just copying and pasting this command, export image to drive, we have to establish a few things. First is the image we want to export. That would be our clipped elevation, but we also have to visualize it again, because otherwise it just exports as a ton of ones and zeros that we can't do much with. Make sure we get the correct palette. That would be the same one we used right up here. And then we can just close that up. Now, providing a description, that's just a name for the file. Scale, we want to keep the resolution high at this time. So we're using the 30 by 30 meters per pixel as established in the database. The region is just the geometry we established earlier. Max pixels, we're keeping this as high as we can right now because it's always possible to lower the resolution later, but we can't increase it. So we want to keep it high at the start. This file format command is not too necessary. You can establish it later once we run this code. All right. If you look to the tasks, it's lit up here, and we can run this task. Fill out a few things in here. I'm going to put it in my Google Earth Engine folder, and now we click run. You can see with my previous attempts, these take a decent amount of time, but we'll check back in once that's done. All right, now we're all done with that. Make sure you save your code, and we're all set to go. I have my file saved to my Google Earth Engine folder. I have two here, but the most recent one is the one we are using today. So we'll download that. And then we are going to open it up in Photoshop. Now the reason for that is this is a TIFF file. A TIFF file is a very high capacity file for photos and high capacity in terms of resolution. The file we made is around 68 megabytes, whereas your normal phone camera photo will only be around 12 to 15 megabytes. So we can just open that from our downloads. And there we go. There is our full photo that we just generated. Now we can do some light editing here to clean it up for our map later in ArcGIS Pro, but we don't need to. I'm going to go over the steps in case you would like to remove the black background, replace it with something else, but that is up to you. To do that, we will select by color and select all the blacks in the image. This selects all the black pixels. And you can see there's some errors in the code, like these crop fields here, probably aren't at sea level. The surrounding areas aren't, at least. So if you want, you can go and edit those out. Simple pasting over with the brush tool, right? But you can also reference with a map to make sure you're not incorrect here. But once you've done that, if you would like to, you can go back to the select tool, inverse the selection. So now you've selected all of the data and none of the sea level. And then layer via cut. This will highlight only your data. And you can save that as a PNG and put whatever you would like on the background. We don't need to do that though. We're going to keep the black background for our purposes. So we can just go ahead and deselect. To use the image as a more useful file, we're going to use it as a PNG. And this is where we should start using some data management techniques. I'm just going to save all of my work in my documents folder under the folder Florida DEM project. We can just leave this as Everglades DEM. All right, now that we have a version of the file in a more useful format, a more readable format by different programs or yourself, let's double check. Florida DEM, and yeah, perfect. Took a second to load in, but here is our image in a PNG file format. Now that we have that, we can load it up into ArcGIS Pro. Now before we open up ArcGIS Pro, we should do a little more research into datasets to use for our project. For mine, I would like to visualize how water flow from Lake Okeechobee through the Everglades is cut off by the highways and roads that go across the area. To do that, I researched a little before this video and found datasets I would like to use. And these are what are called vector files or shape files, which are just simple points or lines across a map, geometry essentially, that demonstrate some aspect. This represents the interstate, while this represents a bit finer of a region. So we're going to download both of those and move them into our Florida DEM folder. We can open them up and organize them accordingly. Now just extract both of the zip files. And we should be ready to open ArcGIS. We're going to be starting from a totally blank project. We can name this Florida Everglades DM. And we'll be choosing the same folder we've been working with before. Now that's booted up, our first step is to load in our data. So we navigate just back to our file folder. And we can put in those shapefiles. We can already see a lot of information here. We can also load up our PNG of the digital elevation model. This one might take a second because it's still quite a large file. Click yes. Now, although we loaded in the image file, it doesn't appear yet. For that to happen, we need to do what's called georeferencing. So if you click imagery, go over to georeference, then click fit to display. It will paste our image across the display. Now you might notice how our image is a bit wider than the image of Florida in the background. That is because they use different projections of the map. As Earth is a three-dimensional sphere and our maps are a two-dimensional plane, there are different ways of projecting our world onto that two-dimensional plane. And the version that ArcGIS uses differs from that which was scanned by the Copernicus satellite with our dataset. To fix this, we add what are called control points. But before then, we will move and scale our image as best as possible to get it to line up. This doesn't have to be exact, it's only as best as you can get. Once we've gotten that done, we can add our control points to align it as much as possible. To do this, we find areas that have very distinct points or shapes to them to map to either side. So we'll let this find out. Now, found a point that looks good, the outlet of this river. We're going to click here. And then we can turn off that layer and find the corresponding area out here. This takes a bit of trial and error and is a little bit of a lengthy process, but it helps to create a very accurate image. I like to go from top left to bottom right, and then top right to bottom left. You see how it brought over that point to match up with the base image. You should do this around 7 to 10 times roughly for as accurate an image as possible. That should be good. Now turning the image on and off, you can see we have a pretty close to reality representation with our DAM. Make sure we save. I like to export the control points, as if we need to re-export our image from Google Earth Engine, it helps to have these control points, as we can just load them in instead of going through that whole lengthy process over again. Okay, and now that we're all saved and exported, we can close the georeference. Now you can adjust your roads to look however you like. I think just making them black looks alright. The point here isn't detail, more just a representation of the highway from a large scale. Now that we have that done, our map is nearly complete. To finish it out, we make what's called a layout. Define the size of what you would like to use here. I like using letter or just a regular piece of paper size. And then we insert the map frame. That would be our map as we saw it earlier. And draw out how we would like it to be. From here, we can adjust it a bit further to fit within the margins. Right-click and click Activate to change your perspective within that frame. So our map only wants to focus on Lake Okeechobee and down through the Everglades into the south. So we're going to leave it just right about here. Looks good to me. Close that out. And we can adjust it further from there. Now at this point in the process, you can get a little creative with how you would like your layout to look. I'm keeping mine pretty standard. I'm going to add a title, a legend, and a few few details to help the reader understand what I'm trying to convey with my map. So first we have to make a little space for that, both top and bottom. Then we can just add in text describing what this is all about. Okay, looks good. Now, two things every map absolutely needs is a north arrow indicating which way is north, and a scale to help you identify how big an area is. So we can insert those with ArcGIS right here. You may need to adjust the appearance of it a little bit to fit in with that black background. And now I'm going to add a few arrows to help demonstrate the water flow as it follows elevation downward. Let's add just one more at the bottom here to use as a key. And we're also going to add a line to represent the roads. I like to add the text later in Photoshop as it is a little easier to manage and move around. So once we export this, we're going to do that. Make sure the colors match. Get it looking exactly how you like. That should be just about it. Let's export it to an area where we can find it very easily. So we're going to go back to that same folder. We can name this export 1. Okay. Let's open up our folder. Take a look at it. Looking good. Let's load it up into Photoshop and make some final edits before we send it out. So now that we're in Photoshop, we're going to add some more labels and include a gradient of our different colors to represent our 0 meters to 9 meters elevation. So first, let's manage these arrows here and show what they represent a little bit better. I left this one a little bit curved by accident, so I'm just going to fix that. So, got that done. Can now insert text. Now these arrows represent the flow of water. So I'm just going to write flow of water through Everglades. I can adjust that a little bit. And now this line represents major Florida roads. Okay, now to make our gradient. This will require a few different steps, but first we're going to go back to our color browser tab and look at the different codes we got. So we want to make a gradient blending these colors together with black on the end to represent sea level. To do that, let's select an area where we want our gradient to appear. And then we'll click the gradient tool. And click this to make our own custom gradient. I've already done it here with my last project, but I'll start from scratch. Because we have 9 different colors total, we're going to have 9 different sections along this gradient. To do that, we can move out 9 dividers here. One, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And that leaves 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 sections. And to space them out evenly, we're going to be adding 11 to each. So this will be 11, 22, oh, jump the gun a bit, 33, 34, 55, 66, 67, oh, sorry, 77, and 88. Let's make it 89 to adjust for that decimal space a little bit. The reason we are spacing it out as such is because 100 divided by 9 is 11.11 repeating. So to provide that spacing, we're approximating that 11, 22, 33, 30, 44, 55, etc. And now we just implement the appropriate color for each spacing. So we can start with black, and then we will just follow along. Now that we've input all the color codes, we have this nice gradient that we can then put into our selection. All that's left to do is label the gradient appropriately. We start at 0 meters, and then get up to 9 meters. The purpose of this map isn't to provide, oh, this area is 4.5 meters tall, this area is 8 meters tall. So what's important for the reader is just an understanding of what low and high is and how that varies in between. Looks like a pretty great map. Now that we're done, we can export as a PNG. We can call this final export. And that's just about it.